I've collected some really interesting historical photos. Let's get 1,000 subscribers on this channel. I will be very grateful to you. Priscilla Bejano was born with excessive hair and extra teeth, then became a famous circus performer and actress. She married fellow performer Emmett Bejano, spoke against bigotry, and stayed devoted to him for nearly 60 years. An American soldier guards wounded German prisoners captured in Italy on May 23, 1944. Their fresh bandages and torn uniforms reveal how quickly combat turned armed soldiers into exhausted captives waiting beside a military road. In 1931, Bernard Coble photographed Stella Grassman covered in tattoos from neck to ankles. Most were inked by her husband, Samuel Deffy Grassman, a master tattoo artist. The son of a cotton sharecropper works in a Mississippi field in 1935, carrying a sack nearly as large as his body. Sharecropping trapped many families in debt, forcing even young children to help harvest cotton instead of attending school. James Stewart became the first major Hollywood star to enlist, months before the United States entered World War II. He later commanded B-24 Liberator bombers and flew 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe, rising from private to brigadier general. On March 28, 1941, Virginia Woolf left 2 farewell letters, filled her pockets with stones, and walked into the River Ouse. Her walking stick was found on the bank, but her body remained missing for 3 weeks. In 1915, a massive earthquake destroyed Avezzano in central Italy in less than 1 minute. Around 30,000 people died, including nearly 96% of the town's residents, making it one of Italy's deadliest earthquakes. This photograph does not show white slaves in Barbados. It depicts Aboriginal prisoners in Australia. The claim that white slaves were cheaper because they were weaker and less obedient is unsupported and comes from a widely debunked historical myth. Britain's Big Freeze began on Boxing Day, December 26, 1962, when heavy snow buried roads and stranded thousands of vehicles. The cold lasted until early March 1963, freezing rivers, stopping trains, and creating snowdrifts several meters high. In April 1918, soldiers in Oklahoma ran for their lives as a military observation balloon exploded during training. These balloons helped crews spot enemy positions, but their hydrogen gas could turn a single spark into a deadly fireball. In 1890, an exhausted young woman in Whitechapel fell asleep while making matchboxes for hours at her table. Her small child slept on the floor beneath her, revealing how poverty forced entire families to work and rest in the same cramped room. In the 19th century, body snatchers secretly dug up fresh corpses and sold them to medical schools for anatomy lessons. They usually stole only the body because taking the dead person's belongings carried a harsher punishment. In 1928, a condemned American prisoner received his final blessing while strapped into an electric chair. With his face hidden beneath a woven mask, he sat beside the control panel that would send a lethal current through his body. In 1911, former Louvre worker Vincenzo Peruggia hid the stolen Mona Lisa inside a trunk in his small Paris apartment. He kept it there for more than 2 years before trying to sell it in Florence, where police finally caught him. This 1933 photograph shows fishermen beside a giant ray caught off Karachi, a city then under British rule in India. Karachi is now part of Pakistan, making the original location easy to misidentify today. On May 14, 1977, photographer Paolo Pedrizzetti captured Giuseppe Memeo firing at police during violent clashes in Milan. Officer Antonio Custra was killed that day, but forensic evidence showed the fatal bullet did not come from Memeo's gun. During NATO's bombing of Yugoslavia in 1999, this bomb was painted with the words, "Happy Easter." The message became one of the campaign's most disturbing images as strikes hit Yugoslavia during the Christian holiday season. A Los Angeles detective wears the eerie mask once used by Baxter Shorter, an accomplice in the brutal murder of Mabel Monahan in March 1953. After Shorter exposed the killers, they kidnapped and murdered him, and police later found this mask in his sister's home. Medical dogs searched swamps, forests, and ravines for badly wounded soldiers. They carried medicine and bandages, then guided medics straight to men who might otherwise never be found. In 1982, Pablo Escobar opened a football field he financed for a poor neighborhood in Medellin. Projects like this helped him win local support, while his cocaine empire was already making him one of the world's most powerful criminals. 17-year-old Anita Royo ran away from home in Melilla and secretly stowed away to southern Spain. Photographed with Moorish soldiers near Madrid on August 13, 1937, she was reportedly the only woman serving with the rebel forces there and worked as a nurse. In 1899, a crowd gathered to watch the former temporary Texas state capitol burn in downtown Austin. The building had housed the state government while the present capitol was under construction. In the late 1800s, this Indian ascetic wore an iron frame around his neck as an extreme act of religious devotion. The rigid cage made lying down impossible, forcing him to sleep sitting upright. A shattered German helmet marks the grave of Corporal Heinrich Fehmann on the Eastern Front. The wooden cross records that he died on July 20, 1941, just weeks after the invasion of the Soviet Union began. This final photo of Andre the Giant was taken in Paris after his father's funeral. 3 days later, he died in his sleep from heart failure caused by acromegaly, the condition behind his enormous size. At the newly liberated Dora Mittelbau camp in April 1945, a former prisoner drags a captured guard by the hair as American soldiers watch. Prisoners there were forced underground to build V-2 rockets, and thousands died from starvation, disease, and brutal labor. Otto Skorzeny was born on June 12, 1908, and became one of Nazi Germany's most notorious commandos. He gained worldwide fame in 1943 after leading the daring mountaintop rescue of imprisoned Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. In June 1941, Soviet forces tore more than 10,000 Estonians from their homes, separating many men from their wives and children before loading them into cattle cars. Thousands died in Siberian exile from hunger, disease, forced labor, and freezing conditions. On Christmas night in 1951, a bomb hidden beneath Harry and Harriet Moore's bedroom destroyed their Florida home. Harry died that night, Harriet died 9 days later, and they became the first civil rights activists assassinated in the modern movement. Henri Cartier-Bresson photographed this hungry child waiting for rice from the China Welfare Charity in Shanghai in 1948. His oversized clothes and fixed stare exposed the human cost of poverty during the final phase of the Chinese Civil War. In 1900, officials burned a Honolulu Chinatown building to stop the bubonic plague, but strong winds sent the fire out of control. It burned for 17 days, destroyed 38 acres, and left about 4,000 people homeless. French nuns, Alice Domon and Léonie Duquet, were tortured by Argentina's military dictatorship and forced to pose beside a Montoneros banner in 1977. The staged photo blamed the guerrillas, but the regime later drugged the women and threw them alive from an aircraft into the Atlantic Ocean. On February 1, 1953, a North Sea storm surge swallowed Oud Tong during the Netherlands' deadliest natural disaster of the 20th century. The village lost 305 people, more than any other Dutch community in the flood. On January 4, 1942, 48-year-old Perry Butler survived a fall from a 10-story Los Angeles building after crashing onto a car. Though badly injured, the former gas company employee received treatment and was expected to survive. In 1907, 18-year-old Blanche watched her parents being murdered after she failed to stop their killer. Orphaned overnight, she became the guardian of her 6 younger siblings, including twins Edwin and Edna, pictured here. China detonated its first hydrogen bomb on June 17, 1967, just 32 months after its first atomic test. Soldiers holding Mao's Little Red Book celebrated as China became the world's 4th thermonuclear power. In 1951, American bombers struck a North Korean railway station, blasting trains and tracks from the air. Railways were vital supply routes from China, so destroying them could stop weapons, fuel, and soldiers from reaching the front. On April 8, 1940, a German gun sight captured the British destroyer Glowworm, sinking after attacking the heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper. Before going down, Glowworm rammed the cruiser, and her captain later received the Victoria Cross after the German commander praised his courage. On March 19, 1938, Republican forces detonated a massive mine beneath Madrid's five-story Casablanca building. The blast destroyed the nationalist stronghold and reportedly killed 300 soldiers during the Spanish Civil War. On August 31, 1991, an anonymous KGB agent surrendered his handgun as the feared Soviet security service was shut down in Vilnius. Just 6 days later, Moscow officially recognized the independence of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. In 1941, Ustasha forces gathered Serbs inside a church in Glina, promising safety through conversion to Catholicism. Many were later murdered in one of the most notorious massacres committed by the Ustasha regime. In 1826, explorer Jules Dumont d'Urville reported waves nearly 100 feet high, but scientists publicly mocked his claim as impossible. In 1995, the Dropner oil platform finally recorded a rogue wave with instruments, proving that these deadly giants were real. These men were photographed after their arrest for robbery in Sydney in 1921. Their neat suits and calm poses look more like an office portrait than a mugshot, showing how misleading the face of crime can be. Otabenga, a Mbuti man from Congo, was taken to the United States and displayed at the 1904 World's Fair. In 1906, the Bronx Zoo placed him inside its monkey house with an orangutan, turning a human being into a public attraction. German female prisoners rest outside their tent at Vilvoorde, Belgium, in 1945. The camp held captured SS and Luftwaffe members alongside civilian women, making it difficult to know who had served the Nazi regime and who had merely been caught in its collapse. Louisa Madame Lou Bunch ran the richest brothel in Gold Rush Central City, Colorado. During a deadly epidemic, she and her workers risked their lives nursing sick miners, and the town later honored her with one of its largest funerals. On Bloody Sunday in 1905, thousands of workers marched peacefully toward the Winter Palace to deliver a petition to Tsar Nicholas II. Imperial troops opened fire, killing and wounding hundreds and destroying public faith in the Tsar. On April 30, 1980, Amsterdam erupted as squatters and anarchists protested Queen Beatrix becoming monarch during a severe housing shortage. Under the slogan, "No housing, no coronation," protesters fought police in one of the largest riots in modern Dutch history. In 1960, Tokyo erupted as thousands of protesters fought police over a security treaty that allowed American troops to remain in Japan. The crisis peaked when student Michiko Kanba was killed during a clash at the National Diet. On January 7, 1944, actor Jimmy Stewart spotted an American bomber group flying 30 degrees off course after a raid on Ludwigshafen. He stayed beside the exposed planes as 60 German fighters attacked, helping save the group from destruction. On May 25, 1972, an inmate escaped from San Quentin State Prison after leaving this life-size dummy in his cell. Guards discovered the trick only after the prisoner had vanished. On May 4, 1970, students protesting the Vietnam War faced the Ohio National Guard at Kent State University. Minutes later, guardsmen fired 67 bullets in 13 seconds, killing 4 students and wounding 9. On August 8, 1944, an American pilot was buried beside the wreckage of his Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. Soldiers marked his grave with a cross and carefully arranged the aircraft's machine gun ammunition around it. Russian sailors posed beside a Japanese shell hole in the cruiser Oleg after the Battle of Tsushima in June 1905. Despite 12 hits and 13 deaths, the the battered ship escaped destruction and reached the neutral port of Manila. The Valley of Tears in January 1973 and January 2025, where a Uruguayan Air Force plane crashed in 1972. 16 survivors endured 72 days in the Andes and ate the bodies of dead passengers before 2 men crossed the mountains to find help. In 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed during rush hour after one corroded eye-bar failed, sending vehicles into the freezing Ohio River and killing 46 people. Months earlier, locals reported a mysterious winged creature called the Mothman, which folklore later linked to the disaster. After the Great Blizzard of 1888, fallen telegraph poles and tangled wires turned this New York City street into a deadly obstacle course. The disaster helped convince the city to bury communication lines underground and accelerate plans for a subway. Students and staff pose at the Ottoman School for the Deaf and Mute in Istanbul around 1895. The school opened in 1889 and became one of the Ottoman Empire's earliest institutions to provide formal education for deaf children. In September 1979, the crew filmed the Blues Brothers car chase inside the abandoned Dixie Square Mall near Chicago. The production smashed real storefronts and wrecked dozens of cars, turning a dead shopping center into one of cinema's wildest chase scenes. In 1927, school board treasurer Andrew Kehoe murdered his wife, destroyed his farm, and detonated explosives hidden beneath Bath Consolidated School. He then blew up his car, killing himself and 4 others, bringing the final death toll to 45, with 58 injured. This is Adolf Eichmann, one of the chief organizers of the Holocaust, after Mossad agents captured him in Argentina in 1960. Blindfolded, sedated, and dressed as a sick El Al crew member, he was secretly flown to Israel for trial. On February 14, 1942, Japanese paratroopers boarded a Mitsubishi Ki-57 transport before the assault on Palembang, Sumatra. Their target was one of Southeast Asia's richest oil centers, where a small airborne force seized key positions before Allied defenders could destroy them. In 1983, heavily armed Secret Service agents rushed President Reagan away from Augusta National Golf Club. A gunman had crashed through the gates, taken 7 hostages, and demanded to meet the president. A Red Cross nurse gives medicine to a starving survivor after the liberation of a concentration camp near Hanover, Germany in 1945. His striped uniform and skeletal body reveal the brutal conditions prisoners endured until Allied troops arrived. This aerial photograph shows Hiroshima burning after the atomic bombing on August 6, 1945. An American reconnaissance plane captured the massive smoke cloud from 25,000 feet, about 7,500 meters above the destroyed city. This rare photo shows Amelia Earhart beside her plane in Darwin, Australia, on June 28, 1937. 4 days later, she and navigator Fred Noonan vanished over the Pacific while flying toward Howland Island, leaving one of aviation's greatest mysteries. A wounded United States Marine lies aboard a ship after the brutal battle for Iwo Jima in 1945. Nearly 7,000 Americans were killed and more than 19,000 were wounded during the 36-day fight. In 1979, motorists saw a hand waving from the trunk of a battered Dodge on an Alabama highway. Police stopped the car and rescued a man who had been robbed, beaten, stabbed, and trapped inside for 14 hours while his attackers discussed where to dump his body. In August 1951, around 250 people in Pont Saint-Esprit suffered terrifying hallucinations after eating bread, and some even jumped from windows. Several died, dozens were hospitalized, and the exact cause of the mysterious poisoning remains disputed. David Parker Ray, the toy box killer, was suspected of murdering up to 60 women inside his soundproof torture trailer. He was finally caught after Cynthia Vigil escaped naked, wearing only an iron collar, and ran for help. In 1987, 3 visiting preachers convinced residents of Fight Atoll that demons had taken over their community. During the religious panic, 6 people were killed, and 23 islanders were later convicted. In 1943, 19-year-old British soldier Eric Brown hid a Hawkins anti-tank mine beneath his abusive father's wheelchair cushion. The blast killed Archibald Brown, but spared his nurse, and Eric was declared insane at trial and confined until 1975. In 1955, Jack Gilbert Graham hid a bomb in his mother's suitcase to collect her life insurance. It exploded 11 minutes after United Airlines Flight 629 left Denver, killing his mother and 43 other people. In 1895, Michael Cleary burned his wife Bridget to death, believing fairies had replaced her with a changeling. He and 3 others were jailed after days of brutal rituals meant to force the supposed fairy out. On April 20, 1978, a Soviet fighter fired a missile into Korean Airlines Flight 902 after it entered Soviet airspace. Despite a shattered wing and 2 passenger deaths, the pilots landed the Boeing 707 on a frozen lake. In 1944, nearly 4,000 tons of ammunition exploded underground at RAF Fald, creating a mushroom cloud and one of Britain's largest craters. At least 70 people were killed, including workers trapped deep inside the depot. During the Battle of Tampere in 1918, Red Commander Kustaa Salminen accidentally detonated a box of hand grenades inside the Red headquarters. The blast killed and wounded several Red leaders at a critical moment, yet Salminen survived. 3 days before his execution in 1985, serial killer Carol Cole calmly lit a cigarette during an interview inside Nevada State Prison. The 47-year-old confessed to killing 14 people, but authorities believed the true number could be higher. On May 14, 1940, this twin-engine Potez 63-11 was shot down near Louvain during the German invasion of Belgium. Soldiers approached the burning wreckage of an aircraft built to watch enemy movements from dangerously low altitude. In 1986, Alexei Ananenko, Valery Bespalov, and Boris Baranov entered the flooded basement beneath Chernobyl to open critical drainage valves. Despite being called a suicide squad, all 3 survived the mission, and Ananenko and Bespalov lived for decades afterward. On 22 and 23 February 1941, German police seized almost 400 Jewish men in Amsterdam and sent them to concentration camps. All but 1 died, and the shocking raid triggered the February strike, the first large public protest against Nazi persecution in the occupied Netherlands. Every year, powerful men gather in California's Redwood Forest at the secretive Bohemian Grove, where former presidents have reportedly attended. Their opening ritual, called the Cremation of Care, involves burning a human-shaped effigy before a giant stone owl. This 1949 booking photo shows Jian Lee after her arrest for the torture and murder of 73-year-old William Kent. 2 years later, she became the last woman hanged in Australia. These photographs show Nagasaki before and after the atomic bombing on August 9, 1945. The explosion killed an estimated 74,000 people by the end of that year and destroyed much of the city. 18-year-old Francis Forsyth is escorted into the Old Bailey after his gang kicked Alan G. to death during a failed robbery in 1960. Forsyth was convicted of capital murder and became one of the youngest people executed in 20th century Britain. This is Bruce, the mechanical shark built for Jaws in 1975, with a crew member inside its massive jaws. 3 full-size sharks were made, but saltwater repeatedly damaged their machinery and delayed filming. Born without arms or legs in 1851, Nikolai Kobalkov became a famous Russian performer who could shoot a pistol, paint, and write. He later ran his own attraction in Vienna's Prater and starred in a silent film about his extraordinary life. In 1950, communist protesters in Paris hurled café chairs at police after Le Figaro published the memoirs of Nazi officer Otto Skorzeny. The former SS commando was infamous for rescuing Italian dictator Benito Mussolini from captivity. Thomas Hoopker captured these New Yorkers in Brooklyn as smoke rose from the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. Their relaxed appearance caused outrage, but those photographed later said they were shocked and discussing the attack. This photograph shows the aftermath of the Via D'Amelio bombing, where the Sicilian mafia detonated a car packed with about 100 kilograms of explosives. Anti-mafia magistrate Paolo Borsellino and 5 police officers were killed on July 19, 1992. United States censors blocked this 1915 photograph because it revealed military hand-to-hand combat techniques. The image shows soldiers training to stop a bayonet attack at close range, a skill officials feared the enemy could study and copy. 10 years after Hiroshima, Mitsuko Kuramoto and Emiko Takamoto arrived in New York with scars from the atomic bomb. They were among 25 Japanese women who traveled 6,700 miles, hoping American surgeons could rebuild their faces. On August 29, 1975, a giant wave flipped a 37-foot experimental raft near Niagara Falls, throwing all 29 passengers into the rapids. Helicopters rescued many, but 3 people died, and investigators later found that the life jackets failed safety standards. On September 15, 1963, Ku Klux Klan members detonated 19 sticks of dynamite beneath the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. The blast killed 4 black girls preparing for Sunday worship, and the last 2 surviving bombers were not convicted until 2001 and 2002. Japanese Army Lieutenant Nakamura is led to the gallows near Singapore on March 14, 1946. He was sentenced to death for beheading an Indian soldier on Pulau Island during the Second World War. This rare image shows Chinese soldiers clearing Tiananmen Square after the deadly crackdown on June 4, 1989. The Army used rifles and armored vehicles against protesters, killing hundreds, while the exact death toll remains unknown. Paris, 1925. This banquet brought together French veterans whose faces were shattered during the First World War. Known as the Broken Faces, they fought for medical care, public recognition, and the right to live without hiding their wounds. Days after German forces seized Kaunas in June 1941, Lithuanian policemen marched Jewish civilians toward the Ninth Fort. The former military fortress became a prison and mass execution site where tens of thousands of people were murdered. On July 25, 1981, 14-year-old Stacey Arras vanished in Yosemite after horseback riding with her father and several others. Despite a massive search, the only trace ever found was the lens cap from her camera. Robert Earl Hughes became the heaviest living person in the first Guinness Book of Records, weighing 946 pounds. Despite his size, he remained able to walk, traveled as a sideshow performer, and was known as a passionate reader and photographer. On September 11, 2001, a man stopped on a dust-covered New York street to read a paper blown from the World Trade Center. Around him, thousands of office documents littered the ground after the terrorist attacks. In 1971, Senator George McGovern inspected the wreckage of a nightclub bombing in Saigon while campaigning to end the Vietnam War. 1 year later, he challenged President Richard Nixon and suffered one of the largest election defeats in American history. In 1992, Annette Herfkens became the only survivor when Vietnam Airlines Flight 474 crashed into a remote mountain. Trapped beside decomposing bodies, she survived 8 days on rainwater before rescuers finally found her. In 1980, a drilling mistake pierced a salt mine beneath Lake Peigneur, creating a giant whirlpool that swallowed the rig, 11 barges, trees, and docks. All 55 miners escaped, while the canal reversed into a 46-meter waterfall and transformed the freshwater lake into a deep saltwater lake. 3 Nigerian men survived 11 days on the rudder of the oil tanker Alathini II, just inches above the Atlantic Ocean. They traveled more than 4,300 kilometers from Lagos to Spain's Canary Islands with almost no food, water, or shelter before rescuers found them alive. In Buffalo, New York, in 1929, a massive log slid from a truck and pierced straight through this car. The cabin was crushed around the timber, leaving one of the era's most shocking accident photographs. South African police prepared to return fire as Inkatha Freedom Party protesters flee near Shell House on March 28, 1994. The clash erupted before the country's first democratic election and left 19 people dead. This is Tulsa's Greenwood district after the 1921 massacre, when a white mob burned more than 1,000 homes and destroyed the area known as Black Wall Street. As many as 300 people were killed, while thousands of black residents were left homeless. This Jewish-owned shop in Magdeburg was smashed during Kristallnacht, the Nazi-organized terror of November 9th and 10th, 1938. Across Germany and Austria, attackers destroyed thousands of Jewish businesses and synagogues, while about 30,000 Jewish men were sent to concentration camps. In the 1980s, young Persebaya football fans packed onto free military trucks to celebrate a victory, with 24 overloaded vehicles carrying them home. Just 1 kilometer later, this truck overturned, sending 12 people to hospital with minor injuries. In April 1988, a naked man wearing only a dog collar jumped from Robert Berdella's second-floor window in Kansas City. Despite a broken foot, he reached a meter reader and revealed that Berdella had tortured him for days. Sarajevo residents line up for water in 1992 after the siege cut off basic utilities. Every trip exposed civilians to sniper fire and shelling, turning a simple container of water into a deadly necessity. Robert Wadlow towered over a classmate at his high school graduation in 1936. A pituitary disorder made him the tallest recorded person in history at 8 feet 11 inches. Yet he dreamed of working in advertising rather than becoming a circus attraction. In Okinawa in 1945, a Marine patrol found these 10 Korean girls near a Japanese military supply post after a skirmish. The original wartime caption claimed their impoverished families had sold them into prostitution. Japan's Socialist Party leader Inejiro Asanuma is rushed away after 17-year-old ultranationalist Otoya Yamaguchi stabbed him on October 12, 1960. The assassination was broadcast live on television, and Asanuma died within minutes. In 1835, Maori invaders killed about 300 Moriori on the Chatham Islands and enslaved the survivors. The Moriori refused to fight because of a sacred peace law, and Tame Horomona, believed to be the last full Moriori, died in 1933. On March 6, 1981, Marianne Bachmeier smuggled a Beretta handgun into a West German courtroom and fired 7 shots at Klaus Grabowski. He was on trial for raping and murdering her 7-year-old daughter Anna, and Bachmeier said, "I did it for you, Anna." This ruined gym stands in Pripyat, only a few kilometers from the Chernobyl nuclear plant. On April 27, 1986, the entire city was evacuated in hours, and residents were told they would return in 3 days. After Hideki Tojo survived a suicide attempt in 1945, an American dentist engraved "Remember Pearl Harbor" in Morse code on his dentures. A senior officer discovered the secret message and ordered it removed before Tojo ever wore them. On April 18, 1926, 5 massive lava waves from Mauna Loa advanced toward Hupaloa, growing larger before crashing into the sea. Severe earthquakes shook the area as police guarded nearby highways from crowds of excited sightseers. Martin Pistorius became trapped inside his motionless body for years, fully aware but unable to tell anyone he could hear and understand them. He even heard his exhausted mother say she hoped he would die, then slowly regained movement and eventually learned to communicate through a computer. After the Chernobyl disaster, these teenagers waited beneath heat lamps for treatment in Cuba. From 1990, Cuba treated thousands of young victims for radiation-related illnesses at Tarará, a former seaside resort near Havana. On May 6, 1968, Neil Armstrong ejected from a lunar landing training vehicle just seconds before it crashed and burst into flames. His parachute opened at roughly 200 feet, and he walked away with only minor injuries. This newspaper presented an American transparent gas mask designed to keep the wearer recognizable, modeled by Jane Harris. Beside it, a British hood-style mask shows how wartime protection could completely hide a person's face. Canada's residential school system took about 150,000 Indigenous children from their families to erase their languages, cultures, and beliefs. Churches ran most of these schools with government funding, and the last federally funded one remained open until 1997. In Wilcox, Arizona, a frightened bear climbed a power pole and became trapped among dangerous electrical wires. Workers cut the power, preventing a deadly shock while rescuers carefully brought the animal back down. After serving as an Army sergeant in World War I, James Gregory became Morristown's first black police officer. Hired as an emergency officer in 1928 and made a permanent patrolman in 1934, he later became a respected sergeant known for helping local youth. Australian soldiers used a Lewis machine gun against emus during the Great Emu War of 1932. The second campaign killed about 986 birds, far fewer than the claimed 3,000. In 1930, this diver was pulled up unharmed after descending 180 feet in a heavy metal suit. At that depth, the pressure was more than 6 times greater than at the surface. This aerial photograph shows the Western Front shattered by years of fighting during the First World War. Several generations of trenches cross the ground between countless craters left by artillery, mortars, and massive mines detonated beneath enemy positions. On September 29, 1963, the Soviet nuclear submarine K-181 surfaced at the North Pole. Its crew found a rare opening and broke through ice only 30 to 50 centimeters thick. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake ripped open this street and violently bent its steel streetcar tracks. The rails reveal how the ground shifted during one of the deadliest disasters in American history. During the Winter War, a Soviet T-26 tank pulls an armored sled carrying infantry toward Finnish positions. These crude steel carriers gave soldiers some protection from bullets and shrapnel while crossing open snow under heavy fire. North Vietnamese Tank 843 was among the first armored vehicles to break into South Vietnam's presidential palace grounds. On April 30, 1975, its arrival marked the fall of Saigon and the end of the Vietnam War. This United States police photograph from 1940 is often described as the mugshot of a woman arrested for being a lesbian. The handwritten label reveals how authorities once treated sexual orientation as evidence of criminality. These heavy steel nets blocked German submarines from slipping into Allied harbors and attacking ships at anchor. Held by floating drums, they could trap a submarine underwater or force it to surface under enemy fire. In 1943, New York police photographed these 4 fortune tellers after arresting them under laws that treated paid predictions as a crime. Their booking photograph shows how seriously the city once prosecuted people for claiming to reveal the future. British soldiers burned the last huts of Bergen-Belsen in May 1945 to stop a deadly typhus epidemic. Survivors watched as the camp where tens of thousands had died was destroyed by flames. Moscow was left in ruins after a week of fierce street fighting between Bolsheviks and government forces in November 1917. Artillery shells struck the Kremlin, while hundreds of people were killed across the city. Mexican Emperor Maximilian and his generals faced a firing squad on June 19, 1867, after Benito Juarez defeated their French-backed empire. Maximilian reportedly gave each executioner a gold coin and asked them not to shoot his face so his mother could recognize him. German aircraft attacked the Allied invasion fleet off Anzio on January 22, 1944, as bombs blast the sea around a warship. The raid struck during Operation Shingle, the surprise landing that opened a new front behind German lines in Italy. In 1953, Alfred Glassell Jr. caught this enormous black marlin off Cabo Blanco, Peru. It weighed 1,560 pounds, or 707 kilograms, and remains the largest black marlin ever caught on rod and reel. Efunroye Tinubu became one of 19th century Lagos's richest traders by selling enslaved people, weapons, salt, and tobacco. She later fought British influence in Lagos, but her enormous fortune remained tied to a trade that destroyed thousands of lives. This mugshot shows Pablo Escobar before he became the world's most notorious cocaine trafficker. In 1976, Colombian police arrested him after finding 39 pounds of cocaine hidden in a car. Early 20th century loggers lifted massive trunks with crude cable rigs, often working directly beneath loads weighing several tons. A snap chain or shifting log could crush a worker instantly, making logging one of the deadliest jobs of the era. A wounded Harlem Hellfighter returns to a cheering New York crowd in 1919. These black soldiers fought under French command, spent 191 days on the front, and returned as heroes despite facing racism at home. Let's get 1,000 subscribers on this channel. I will be very grateful to you.